And gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in. This is a USA Today article. Pam Bondi likely to be confirmed as Trump pick glides through hearings. Recap. Hit subscribe to this channel. It's a done deal, especially if Bondi gets one of Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski or Mitch McConnell. It really doesn't matter. She doesn't even need any of them. Like Pete Hegseth, we can just get J.D. Vance to be the tie-breaking vote. So hit subscribe to this channel. This is huge. Trump, thank God, now has the Department of Justice, the Defense Department. He has Central Intelligence now with John Ratcliffe. He will have Kash Patel at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's pretty much a done deal. He will finally have a cabinet to defend the country, to defend Trump from the most absurd McCarthy-era Red Scare nonsense. You'd have to be a complete imbecile to have believed the nonsense from the Democratic Party for the past 8 years. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Paul Bartlett, and to my super chat. I cannot do this without you, ladies and gentlemen. Your super chat support is greatly appreciated. Thank you, Paul. Greatly appreciated. Hit subscribe, everyone. Let's get started. And I want to just say that it is going to be really interesting. It'll be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful to finally see President Trump able to lead the country with a cabinet that will not betray him. He was not a Kremlin operative. He did not try to foment a rebellion. He should never have been impeached the first or second time, but especially the first time. He didn't try to pressure any other country to investigate Biden. Biden pardoned essentially himself. In addition to all the government officials we knew were corrupt, Biden pardoned people who committed crimes. And Democrats are upset about the January defendants. They were in prison for 4 years. Not one, actually I should say, the majority of people who did not demonstrate peacefully, but who demonstrated and committed property damage to the tune of billions of dollars, went after law enforcement, injured people, did even worse than that. The majority did not get prison time, the vast majority. And so when Democrats say, oh my God, what happened to law and order that entire summer? Do we even know who went after President Trump in late May of his last term and last year in office? Do we even know how many demonstrators committed crimes? And I agree with why people peacefully demonstrated. I understand that and respect that. But you, as a Democratic Party, give tacit approval to billions upon billions in property damage, chaos, mayhem, curfews throughout the country in every major city, including Washington, D.C. They went after Trump in late May. Tim Pool talks about this all the time, and it's true. Where's the justice there? The January defendants already served years in prison. And Biden preemptively pardons. He should be called Biden and pardon. Anyway, let's start. Pam Bondi is a done deal. Thank God. Trump will finally have a Department of Justice that implements his political philosophy. Every president had the luxury of that except Trump, but he will now. And anyone who committed crimes trying to set him up and frame him will be likely indicted and prosecuted and possibly imprisoned.
Several of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have insinuated that your friendship with Donald Trump is a problem. My colleagues on my side of the aisle have leaned into this, kind of exposing the hypocrisy, given what we have seen before from previous administrations. And I would just like to read something to you from 1961. Washington, January 13th. The Senate Judiciary Committee approved without objection today President-elect John F. Kennedy's selection of his brother, Robert, as Attorney General. The vote came after a 2-hour hearing. Would you like a 2-hour hearing, by the way?
Can we redo this?
Yeah, that's right. The vote came after a 2-hour hearing devoted in large part to the praise of Mr. Kennedy. Forecasts that there would be several critical questionings, especially from Republicans, proved incorrect. All 14 committee members present voted to approve the nomination when it was formally made. The New York Times. As it said, blood is thicker than water, meaning family bonds are stronger than any other relationship. I just think that that needs to be before the American people once again, and I appreciate you continuing to reiterate that you will serve the people of this great country and that you will follow the law.
Thank you, Senator.
I'd like to move to something that has become another theme of this hearing, and that is Senator Grassley's letters. So I myself sent a letter to our current Attorney General and unfortunately received the very same treatment. So in front of this committee, Merrick Garland, Attorney General Garland, had made a testimony that we found evidence to possibly contradict what he had said. On March 23rd, he came in front of the Appropriations Committee, where I was a member, and I presented him with evidence that the DOJ had actively discouraged the enforcement of 18 United States Code Section 1507 at the homes of Supreme Court justices in the wake of the leak of the Dobbs decision. Evidence that appeared that he had clearly either misled or misinformed this committee. Evidence that showed that the department was putting politics above duty. Section 1507, as you well know, makes it illegal to picket or parade near a judge's residence with the intent of influencing them in the discharge of their duty. It was openly and flagrantly violated on numerous occasions in the summer of 2022, yet never enforced by U.S. Marshals stationed at the home of the justices, in large part because of the evidence that we showed that they had been actively discouraged from making arrest. When we asked Attorney General Garland why no one had been prosecuted, he said because no one had been arrested. Really going back to the fact that the U.S. Marshals in these slides were actively discouraged from making them. On May 3rd, 2023, I led a group of senators, many on this committee, sending a letter to the Attorney General asking him for a response to 19 questions by the end of May. And to this day, I have yet to receive any actual response to any of my questions. To Senator Grassley's second point, if you do get a response, which mine came almost a year late, it was just words on paper. And so what I'd like to know from you is two things. One, if confirmed, will you do everything in your power to have yourself or one of your top officials respond in a timely manner to those of us on this committee? And second, since I am almost out of time, will you commit to working to help me get answers about why this happened in the Department of Justice so that we can ensure that it never happens again?
Yes, Senator, and it sounds like we're going to have to open an entire unit to handle Senator Grassley's letters.
Good.
To respond to them.
That's what we all like to hear.
Will you? Congratulations.
So that was the senator from Alabama, and she's 100% right. What took place for years and years is that there was a double standard. There was an obvious double standard, and Democrats love to hide behind plausible deniability. No, well, nobody was arrested. Wow. And in the Dobbs decision, how many places of worship, how many counseling centers that are conservative or religious in nature were vandalized? I mean, property. You have 4 supporters of President Trump and one unarmed woman that day in January, terrible day in January, whose lives were either lost, that woman's life was taken. Not one Democratic senator cares. They grandstand, and everyone can see It's just blatant, pure hypocrisy. Okay? Blatant hypocrisy. And they get away with billions upon billions in property damage, and there's one terrible day attributed to Trump supporters, and it's, oh my God, national reconciliation. Like, are you serious? You had an entire summer. Democrats stood by, gave tacit approval to an entire summer of chaos and mayhem, where a couple of, I think, don't quote me, I mean, it's there, you can look it up. I think a couple of law students through incendiary devices will speak in algorithmically friendly manner, and they weren't given prison time. I mean, it's like you could do pretty much almost anything as a left-leaning demonstrator, but they want to throw the book at anyone who's a conservative. That is against the law, by the way. And to my super chat again, thank you, Paul. I cannot thank you enough for your generosity. Let's continue. This is the senator from Missouri, Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as a state attorney general for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought?
Where was the condemnation from Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, Adam Kinzinger? Where was the condemnation from the January committee that was preemptively pardoned? Where was the condemnation from Biden and Pelosi and the outrage from ladies at The View? Wow, they were silent with that. Wonder why? I wonder why, when chaos, mayhem, vandalism, terrible, horrible law-breaking takes place, and it's Democrats or left-leaning demonstrators. Because if anyone's a conservative that does anything bad, it's directly the fault of Trump. That's the way it is in media. But when demonstrators, obviously aligned with the Democratic Party in some way, shape, or form, at least in terms of ideology, oppose a Supreme Court ruling, and they go after, and you'll hear right now, they target a specific religion. Okay, and when demonstrators go after places of worship and buildings and property that conservatives, that are linked to conservatives, oh my God, nothing. Where's the outrage? I mean, it's like we see the hypocrisy. That's why Trump won the popular vote, every battleground state, the Senate, the House, the presidency. He did better than any Republican with non-white voters in like 60 years. He's completely reformed, revitalized the Republican Party. Let's continue.
In those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, including members of this body who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors, They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans. But at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FACE Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say, I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that.
Okay, there's going to be indictments. If you've watched me for a number of years, you can go back in time when there was a phrase, the indictments are imminent, which I was completely naive back then. I really thought, as a lifelong Democrat, that the Federal Bureau of Investigation was independent and not influenced by politics. So I was certain that Clinton would get indicted for servers with top secret intelligence on them, which is literally impossible to transfer onto private secret servers. Literally. But of course, 8 years and a Medal of Freedom later, nobody cares. Okay, imagine if Trump had private servers. I mean, the double standard is unbelievable. The point is, people will get indicted. They are, this time, imminent. And if you broke the law, if people broke the law, if they leaked classified data, if they broke the law, I mean, the statute of limitations for leaking classified data is like 5 years, but if you're a Democratic senator or congressperson and you leaked classified data more than 5 years ago, I'm not exactly sure if that is set in stone. I think the general statute of limitations is around 5 years. I'm not exactly sure if depending on how much classified data to, let's say, national publications just to harm Trump, I'm not sure you can get away with that. I could be wrong. But if they don't, like if the January committee, they're going to get subpoenaed. If they don't give records or show up for testimony, they will have the Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon treatment. They will get the treatment that they gave out. So, I mean, but you're talking about also criminal behavior, setting up and framing Trump with a dossier, going after Trump politically, lying to the American public, 18 U.S. Code 371, truly defrauding the public, okay, and a whole bunch of, you can hiding classified data or exculpatory evidence after the pardon. If they break the law after any pardon, they're not protected. But that's the way they roll. So it's like a moth to a flame. It'll be impossible for the Democratic Party not to break the law after Biden's pardons, which, by the way, they're very specific. They don't really protect these individuals from all types of law breaking.
You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands, this memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs.
Could you imagine that? I mean, my God, could you imagine? Why is this allowed in this country? Okay, I'm not Catholic, but why is this allowed? Every American should be outraged. It doesn't matter what your religion is. Why did Biden's Justice Department target Catholic churches? Why? You're listening to the Missouri senator right now. Why were Catholic churches targeted by Democrats? This would never be accepted at any point in American politics. What happened? How did Democrats twist and contort and alter U.S. politics to where this is okay? If you say the wrong thing, you are literally at risk of never working again in this country. And yet, Biden's Justice Department can choose a religious faith, Catholic churches, and try to infiltrate them and try to, do all this criminal or this deceptive underhand activity. How is this not an outrage? That's my point. Throughout the country, regardless of your religion, how is this not an outrage globally also?
This is an unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved.
And Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and John Ratcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard will have all the classified information that was classified to hide the information. What Democrats have done, and Bush Republicans did this all the time. Okay? They classify to hide. And they say, we can't talk about it. It's unclassified. It's an ongoing investigation. Blah. And they hide and they obfuscate but now everything, this is the funny thing. They went after Trump. The hubris, the arrogance, they thought they could act with impunity forever. But see, if you're a government, if you work for the government, everything that you write down, even as a private citizen, okay, but especially at the government level, it's a bureaucracy with billions of dollars, not only in terms of, finding out what Americans are doing, but everything that happens in the government, there's a record of everything. It's just a matter of if you think you could get away with, they can shred as many papers as they want. Everything's digital, or lots of things are digital. There's there's video, photo. I mean, it's like you can't. All these text messages that were erased, all these emails that were erased, the government has a record. If you work for the government, they have a record. So it's like, it's not difficult for Kash Patel or John Ratcliffe to find out, did these people break the law? Did they break the law going after the Catholic churches? Did they break the law going after Trump, accusing him of being a Russian operative? Did they break the law setting up and framing Trump, everyone around him, hiding exculpatory evidence from January defendants? Did Democrats break the law, yes or no, in their never-ending quest to ruin Trump's life? That's a question that needs to be asked.
Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse.
Nicholas, thank you so very much. To my super chat, thank you. Nicholas, thank you, and I agree with you. And by the way, I believe that's illegal. If they didn't want to talk about this, if the former director and the former attorney general didn't want to talk about this in the Senate, well, it's probably illegal. Okay? What was the point of trying to infiltrate Catholic churches? For what reason? And that has to be breaking the law somehow. So again, you're talking about people who acted with impunity. If Republicans did this to any, let's just say, if Republicans did this, and they did it, how do I say this? Democrats would be outraged if Republicans did something similar. Okay, outraged.
One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I'm confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
This isn't rocket science, and Senator Hawley and Attorney General Pam Bondi and Director Patel will do an amazing job, but it's not rocket science. You find out what government officials decided to infiltrate Catholic churches, and then you ask them in front of Congress why they did this. And if they lie, it's perjury. But I think it's very likely against the law to do such a thing. Okay? I don't think that the United States government could begin to infiltrate places of worship unless there's like some kind of profound legal reason. But very likely, what Democrats did the past 8 years, they tried desperately to intimidate, to be very vengeful. They engaged in a great deal of retribution, and they behaved in a manner that they think that if they were Republicans, like they behaved in a manner they think is appropriate to impose their ideology. So, and they expected Republicans to cower or to conserve. But see, the thing is, the never-Trumpers, they're like petrified. But see, Democrats didn't calculate, they didn't foresee that Trump would completely revitalize the Republican Party. So now you have like Hawley, the Oklahoma senator, all these, the Alabama senator you heard earlier. You have all these Republicans who actually like stand up for themselves and stand up for the country and stand up for Catholic churches. The old Republican Party wouldn't care. They would just join in. They would join the Democrats into trying to torment people.
Again.
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
So Wikipedia does this, the Department of Justice does this, with the way Democrats and media and this kind of like liberal public relations monstrosity, government bureaucracy monstrosities, they'll cite an organization that aligns with them politically, and they'll say it's nonpartisan. And then they'll maybe that organization they cited did good things in the 60s, okay, the 50s or the 60s. And so and you see it in Wikipedia also. Like, so government will cite left-leaning organizations that side with the Democratic Party as objective sources to further their partisan behavior. And Wikipedia is, this person, journalists have said, the media has said. It's like then in Wikipedia, the hit pieces from liberal journalists are cited as controversial for the conservative that happens to be on Wikipedia. But anyway, let's continue.
Really not going to answer that question, so let me get on to.
Would you like to?
I do have questions for the.
Lou Maldonado, thank you to my super chat. Can't do this without you people. Thank you so very much. Lou and Nicholas and Paul, thank you so very much, everybody.
Second round.
You'll have a second round. Would you like to speak before I call on Senator Cruz?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, welcome. Thank you for your long career in public service, and thank you for your willingness to take on this incredibly important office. I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase, equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home.
So wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats who, like, when I say, like, there's so many wonderful people. There's a lot of really beautiful people. We all know them. They're awesome. It's like, but a lot of wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats happen to be atheists, which is just fine. They would scoff at the notion of God and an afterlife, a soul, but they, in a sense, would give their souls to John Brennan, to the Steele dossier, to the ladies at The View, to MSNBC or CNN, or their Facebook groups, or a political ideology. That's why they shun and excommunicate anyone who commits blasphemy within their social circle. Okay? If you actually, like, you know, if you're agnostic or you believe in God or a religion, you know that there's something a lot higher than partisan politics. I mean, there are good reasons to vote for Biden and Harris. Not many in my view, but there are reasons. If you vote for Biden and Harris, you could be a great person. See, the way a lot of liberals think, or progressives, or left-leaning, oh, you're a horrible human being if you vote for Trump. He won the popular vote. So, he's a two-term president. Guess who's on the wrong side of history? Everyone who opposed him. Okay, and they only opposed him because of tribalism and partisanship, and it was their, like, football team. By the way, the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl again. Congratulations. You know, they don't want to, you know what? I think Mahomes is one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. Okay, I can go on forever. Anyway, it would have been nice to see the Bills. It's just something new. It would have been nice to see them maybe win, exercise, you know, the ghosts of the 90s. Anyway, the point is, she says, so help me God. The Trump Republicans know that at the end of the day, there's something a lot more important than politics. The President Obama, Biden, Democrats, their gods, their religion in many ways was DC, Hollywood, public opinion, public relations. That's why they went after Trump with such venom, lying through their teeth. And then they said, oh, Trump lies. Like, no, he's a saint compared to the way Democrats behaved in the past 8 years. Democrats recreated a new Cold War because they couldn't stand losing. Then they pontificated about Trump not accepting results. They jettisoned Biden less than 4 years later. It's like everything they did, Biden pardoning his family, Hunter, them kicking Biden out of the presidential contest, everything they did validates all of Trump's suspicions. But anyway, let's continue.
I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years, trying many cases. So.
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now, I don't believe that is.
It's important to remember that Eric Holder and Merrick Garland were both held in contempt of Congress, okay, because they withheld documents from Congress to protect their respective presidents.
Is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And, you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came.
And they indicted Trump on the most absurd leaps of logic. He tried to interfere with a government proceeding. How? By performing a speech? Then they made the office of the presidency even more powerful. They literally tried to ruin Trump and weaken the presidency. And of course, like everything modern-day Democrats do, the opposite takes place. They strengthened the office of the presidency. The Supreme Court is like, oh, well, we never got to look at this. There's never been an absurd attempt at imprisoning a former president. Oh, okay. Oh, guess what? Trump wins an immunity victory. Yeah, he's protected under official acts, which is performing a speech. Not trying to eliminate an opponent. That's not an official act. But he can perform a speech. Because Democrats said Trump performed a speech, and therefore people tried to foment a rebellion. No, it wasn't. If that was a rebellion, then every single day that summer was a rebellion. Late May of that summer, in front of the White House, and they were mocking Trump for taking refuge, taking cover, as left-leaning demonstrators actually did try to foment a rebellion, which is what the January defendants were accused of. Actually, I don't even know if any of them were convicted of that. I don't think they were at all. But see, again, they make absurd leaps of logic. They ignore everything that happens on their political side, which is infinitely worse. Okay, an entire summer full of property damage, billions upon billions of dollars, is worse than one terrible day, which, by the way, 4 supporters of President Trump lost their lives. So it's like, and one, her life was taken by a law enforcement official. If the roles were reversed, and it was, God forbid, a left-leaning demonstrator, you would never hear the end of it, rightfully so, from the left.
Came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people.
Thank you, Rob. Greatly appreciated, Rob. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's basically everything you've said is accurate. Rob, thank you.
These prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to re-elect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans. 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
So this is about Biden's pardon.
We're here with our friend Peter Schweitzer, one of the great investigative reporters, and nobody has done more to expose the Joe Biden crime family than Peter Schweitzer over the years, with his writings, his books, his appearances, among other places here on this program. And Peter, there you watch as Joe Biden systematically undertakes the greatest cover-up, really, in governmental history. A senator, vice president, president, people used his office, his name, his position to make millions, to shake down foreign governments, even enemy foreign governments. And then he pardons his son, which effectively is pardoning him. And then you have these preemptive pardons of the immediate family. It must be fun at Thanksgiving. The next Thanksgiving, they're all going to stand there and, they'll sit around with the turkey and they'll thank God that Papa Bear pardoned all of them. What do you make of this? You more than any.
The pardons don't protect anyone from future lawbreaking. So
anybody else should have a very fulsome view of this.
Yeah, Mark, I think that these pardons are the single most corrupt acts of any American president in U.S. history. And I don't say that lightly. I say that because what we're talking about is a level of corruption that involved tens of millions of dollars going to the Biden family and what the sources of those funds are. This is not some, paving contractor back in a congressional district paying off a congressman. That's bad enough. These are foreign governments. These are foreign adversaries. And the problem is that the Bidens have now globalized corruption. They've created a situation where American politicians can effectively be bought off by our foreign adversaries. And that's what happened with the Clintons. That's what happened with the Bidens. The three countries were China, Russia, and Ukraine, all of which are highly corrupt, all of which who wanted something from Joe Biden as vice president and as president, and who got those things from this president. And you're quite right.
Does Trump have a laptop full of potential bribery and graft? What did they ever have on? They literally made up a Steele dossier. They completely fabricated Trump being a Kremlin operative. There was not a shred of evidence. Not a shred. And they investigated forever. Knowing very well there wasn't a shred of evidence because they didn't trust Donald Trump. But when anyone doesn't trust the Democratic Party, it's an abomination, it's terrible, it's horrible, the person should never have been born, and it's like, oh my God. Then they say, where's the direct evidence? Is there evidence of widespread fraud? It's like, well, there's a lot of crazy things that took place. You have a person who can't really communicate winning the presidency. How does that happen? Oh, Biden, less than 4 years later, his vice president takes over after he won a primary. He's kicked out by his own political party. I thought he's the most popular candidate of all time. Nothing adds up with the Democratic Party. Nothing adds up. And Trump would have been imprisoned had he actually done something criminal. On the other hand, Democrats actually did likely do a lot of criminal things. You had a laptop with 51 intelligence officials who now don't have security clearances that are worth millions. Those security clearances are worth millions of dollars. And they lied to the American people. Why? For what? So Trump could win the popular vote? I mean, but that's the height of arrogance. It's the arrogance and hubris on display.
To point out that these pardons are of his family, but they are effectively a pardon of him, because there is really no way to investigate or to prosecute Joe Biden for this influence peddling scheme if all the family members who he did it with are now let off the hook legally, which is what these pardons do.
It's not that he thinks Donald Trump will come after them. It's that he knows they're corrupt, isn't it? And haven't you written chapter and verse on this corruption, the millions of dollars that have flowed into the Biden crime family?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Mark. I mean,
Trump was impeached for asking if Biden is corrupt, and then Biden pardons the entire world. Okay, so it's like, you can't make this up.
Loan look, let's look at the timeline. And we talked about this first. The first place when I published my book, I came on your show and we talked about this back in 2018, is the timing is clear. So in January of 2009, Joe Biden is sworn in as Vice President of the United States. And literally 3 months later, Hunter Biden sets up an international financial firm and starts doing business, I'll put that in quotation marks, in the most corrupt places on the planet, China, Russia, and Ukraine. And the money starts to flow. And it's important to point out, by the way, Mark, that these pardons are very specific. They begin with any crimes that might have been committed from January 2014 going forward. And that is precisely the month when the money starts to flow from China, Russia, and Ukraine. They get tens of millions of dollars from Chinese entities that are close to the
So, ladies and gentlemen, Pam Bondi is going to be confirmed. Kash Patel will be confirmed. He's essentially already confirmed. I explained that last night. I got to say, Pam Bondi's better than Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, that was like a brilliant move, I think, by President Trump. That really was a sleight of hand. It was pretty amazing. Hit subscribe. Be here tomorrow and this week. It's going to be an amazing week, ladies and gentlemen. People will be indicted within the first year. And people will be indicted for leaking classified data, not to expose government wrongdoing, not for any, noble or, attempt at making the world a better place, not for revealing lawbreaking, but actually to break the law to hurt Trump. So a lot of data was fed to liberal publications, which served as like a public relations firm. These were all public relations firms for Democrats. So if people leaked classified data in an attempt to simply harm Trump without any benefit to the average citizen, okay? I'll make that clear. If people committed perjury, like Michael Cohen committed perjury like endlessly, likely, almost certainly, allegedly, potentially. You have former bureau officials, you have former government agents, government officials who likely committed crimes, but the evidence of those crimes it was classified up until Kash Patel and Pam Bondi and John Radcliffe and Tulsi Gabbard. So, like I said, if you're in government, like everything you write, there's an endless stream of copies, almost certainly. Anyway, hit subscribe, people. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. And God bless you all. Thank you to my super chat. Thank you.